Right now, in 2026, you are doing something more dangerous than wasting time. You are using your own memories to erase your future. Without noticing, you have turned nostalgia into a full-time job, and that job is slowly convincing you that the best part of your life is already over. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to show you exactly how your mind built this trap, why it feels so safe, and what happens if you never walk out of it. The seduction of a perfect past. If you step back and look at the world right now, the reasons for this mass retreat are not hard to find. 2026 has delivered a relentless stream of instability, political fractures that feel permanent, economic systems that reward few and exhaust many, and a digital landscape that demands you to perform an identity before you have even understood who you are. In an environment like this, the mind does what every living system does under threat. It searches for a sanctuary, and it finds one not in the future, not in the present, but in the 20th century. I want you to notice something strange. Millions of people are currently building their emotional lives inside aesthetics that were created decades before they were born. Vinyl crackle over digital clarity, film grain over 4K resolution, synthesizer warmth over sterile production. This is not just a style choice. Psychologically, these textures function as a sensory time machine, delivering an immediate feeling of solidity, of continuity, of a world that knew what it was. But here is where the deception begins. Your brain, when it longs for the past, is not remembering history. It is curating a highlight reel. It has a built-in editing suite that automatically removes context, the political oppression, the lack of medical care, the social rigidity, the quiet desperation. It keeps the leather jacket, deletes the fear. It keeps the jazz club, deletes the segregation. It keeps the family dinner, deletes the unspoken trauma. What you are left with is not a time period. It is a polished artifact, an unreachable perfection that never actually existed in the way you now imagine it. This is the first trick. The past you are running toward is a digital rendering, not a documentary, and the fact that it feels more real than your Tuesday afternoon should tell you something about how much pain you are trying to escape. But what is this pain exactly? It's a pain of overload. The present moment in 2026 is saturated with information, with competing narratives, with the requirement to constantly define and defend your stance on everything from global policy to personal aesthetics. The ego, overwhelmed by this saturation, seeks a time when the world seemed simpler, not because it was simpler, but because your brain was simpler. You were less aware. You carried fewer responsibilities. So the sanctuary is not actually a time period. It is the memory of your own low-complexity consciousness. That's crucial. You aren't nostalgic for the 90s. You are nostalgic for a version of yourself that was not yet burdened by the weight of a fully formed, digitally accountable identity. This is why the retro trend isn't just cultural. It's a psychological epidemic. We have entire generations curating their internal lives around a nostalgic reconstruction that has more to do with self-anesthesia than with aesthetics. And the cost of this anesthesia is that you stop feeling the present at all. The present becomes a waiting room, a space you tolerate, while you mentally commute back to a golden age. So why does this matter beyond an interesting observation about culture? Because this external trend of retro culture, the fashion, the music, the analog fetish is just the visible skin of a much deeper internal mechanism. We have to look at what the ego is doing when it puts on a 1950s filter over a 2026 problem. And that is where we find the ego acting not as a manager of reality, but as a time traveler. Part 2: The ego, a time traveler, the human psyche. when overloaded, possesses a dangerous talent. It can abandon the present without physically moving. It can live entirely in a curated internal timeline. You have felt this. You are in a moment of conflict, of decision, of awkwardness, and suddenly your mind is somewhere else. It is replaying a conversation from 10 years ago. It is sitting on a porch that no longer stands. It is walking through a school hallway that has been demolished. This is not harmless daydreaming. This is a defense mechanism so refined that it becomes a prison. The ego, faced with the overwhelming demands of modern identity, reaches for idealized memories the way a drowning person reaches for a piece of wood. Modern identity is not simple. You are expected to curate a public self, maintain an authentic private self, perform competence in a volatile economy, and somehow remain spiritually centered while algorithms measure your worth in engagement metrics. That is an impossible assignment for a psyche that evolved to survive in small, stable tribes. And so, to protect itself, the ego time travels backward. It selects a period, often childhood, often early adolescence, and it coats that period in a thick layer of emotional varnish. The boredom is sanded away. The confusion is painted over. What remains is a perfect object, and the ego holds that object in front of the present like a shield. Let's look closer at this varnishing process. Say you are 34 years old. You remember being 17, driving around with friends, no serious bills, no existential dread. That memory is real in its outline, but it is edited. The ego removes the social anxiety, the academic pressure, the feeling of being misunderstood, the acne, the heartbreaks that felt world-ending at the time. It leaves only the sunset, the laughter, the music. Then it presents this cleaned-up product to you and whispers, "This was real life." What you have now is a pale imitation, and you believe it, because the edited version feels so pure, but it's a lie. You are comparing a highlight reel of a naive nervous system to the full documentary of an adult nervous system. That's not a fair comparison. And that unfair comparison is the foundation of the time-traveling ego. Now I need to introduce you to an archetype I call the frozen child. You will recognize it immediately, because you may be living with one inside you right now. The frozen child is that part of the psyche that has made an unconscious decision. I prefer the known pain of the past over the unknown terror of what I might become. The frozen child does not care that the past was actually painful. It only cares that the past is predictable. You have already survived it. You know how that story ends. And in a world where every headline screams uncertainty, a known ending feels like safety. But safety and growth cannot coexist in the same room for long. The frozen child is not just a passive observer. It actively sabotages any situation that threatens to move you forward. Consider this. You get an opportunity, a new job, a new relationship, a creative project that demands you to evolve. Immediately, a wave of anxiety hits. You might think the anxiety is about the opportunity. It is not. The anxiety is coming from the frozen child, who perceives growth as a threat to its existence. Because if you grow, the frozen child's identity, the one built on a static, past-oriented self-image, will die. So it floods your system with fear, and often you retreat. You go back to the familiar. You put on the old music. You abandon the project. And the loop tightens. When you inhabit a life that no longer exists, when your emotional home is a decade, a relationship, or a version of yourself that is gone you are not remembering, you are haunting. You are a ghost in your own life. And the worst part is that you can feel it. There is a specific emptiness that accompanies this state, a flatness, a quiet sense that you are waiting for something, but you cannot name what it is, because what you are waiting for is permission to start living again. And that permission will never come from the past. The past cannot grant a license for the present. Only you can. But to do that, you must first understand how this frozen state becomes a self-perpetuating trap, a trap of the unlived life. Part 3, the trap of the unlived life. Let me give you a direct definition here. Excessive longing for the past is not nostalgia. It is a sophisticated form of procrastination. It is the most elegant delay tactic the psyche has ever engineered. Because when you are busy longing, you do not have to act. When you are immersed in what was, you are exempt from the terrifying responsibility of building what could be. Think about the last time you sat down to create something new, a project, a skill, a conversation that might change a relationship. Did a memory appear? Did you suddenly feel the urge to scroll through old photos, to watch a film you have already seen 12 times, to listen to a song that transports you back to a safer season? That urge was not random. That was the frozen child pulling the fire alarm to prevent you from entering uncharted territory. And you listened, because the fire alarm sounded so much like warmth. This is what I call the nostalgia loop. And it is one of the most effective hijackings of human potential currently operating in the developed world. The loop works like this. You feel a spike of present-day anxiety about your career, your identity, your relationships. Instantly, an old memory surfaces, wrapped in comfort. You reach for it. You consume old media, a show from your teens, a playlist from a past relationship, a video game from a less complicated time. The consumption soothes you temporarily, but it also consumes your time, your creative energy, and your capacity to produce something new. And because you did not produce anything new, your present life remains exactly as it was, or slightly worse, which generates more anxiety, which triggers the loop again. You are not relaxing. You are spinning in place, and you are mistaking the spinning for movement. Let's unpack this loop with an example that might hit close to home. Imagine a person, let's call him Daniel. Daniel is 28. He feels increasingly dissatisfied with his job and his social life. He knows he should be learning new skills, reaching out to people, building something of his own. But every evening, after work, he sits down and immediately opens an old video game from his childhood, or re-watches a sitcom he's seen 5 times through. He tells himself he's decompressing, but the decompression becomes the entire evening. Months go by. The dissatisfaction deepens. Now his anxiety is sharper. And what does he do? He reaches for more nostalgia. He buys retro consoles. He joins online communities dedicated to the era he loves. His identity becomes a 90s kid, not a man building his future. His nostalgia has stopped being a mood. It has become his personality. And the deeper he goes, the harder it is to return, because the present has grown even more intimidating during his absence. Daniel is not lazy. Daniel is caught in the nostalgia loop. And Daniel is in different forms, most of us. This is not just a bad habit. This is a spiritual standstill. And Carl Jung had a very specific name for the condition that results from a life lived in this loop. He called it the refusal of individuation. Individuation is the painful, non-negotiable process of becoming who you actually are, distinct from your parents, distinct from your culture, distinct from your past selves. It is the hero's journey in psychological form, and the hero never stays in the village. The hero must leave. The refusal of individuation is when you decide, consciously or unconsciously, that the call to adventure is too expensive, so you stay. You shrink your world down to a size that no longer threatens you. You take the path of least psychological resistance, which always leads backward, because the past asks nothing of you except your presence. It does not ask for courage. It does not ask for change. It just asks you to stay small, and you comply. Jung observed that when a person refuses the call to individuation, they don't just stay neutral, they regress. The energy that was meant for forward development has to go somewhere, and it goes backward, into infantile wishes, into fantasy, into a glorified past. This regression can look like a cozy, curated life vintage furniture, old music, constant reminiscing, but underneath it, there is a terror of the future. That terror is what keeps the loop spinning. Because as long as you are looking backward, you don't have to see the vast, unformed expanse of your unlived life staring at you from the front. But the soul does not comply quietly. The soul sends signals. And this is where we need to look at something even deeper than memory. We need to look at what you are actually hungry for when you reach for the past. Because it is not the past. Part IV archetypal hunger and the false home there is a moment, usually right before sleep, when the longing hits hardest. You are not thinking about a specific year. You are not even thinking about a specific event. You are feeling a pull toward something wordless, a state of being that has no location, no calendar date. It feels like home. But it is not a house. It is not a city. It is not a person. What you are reaching for is a pre-conscious peace, a time before you had to manage an identity, before you understood that you were separate, before the world split you into observer and observed. Psychologists sometimes call this the oceanic state. Jung would say you are searching for the undifferentiated wholeness that existed before the ego was born. And the tragedy is that because you cannot articulate this hunger, you attach it to whatever artifact was present when you last felt close to that wholeness. A song, a photograph, a decade, and you mistake the artifact for the source. Let me give you an image for this. Imagine a man who, as a child, spent summers at his grandmother's house. The house smelled of baking, the light was golden, and he felt completely safe. As an adult, his life is chaotic. He can't find that safety anywhere. So he begins to collect objects from that era, old radios, vintage fabrics, anything that evokes the memory. But no matter how many objects he collects, the feeling of safety doesn't fully return. Because the feeling was never in the objects. It was in the state of being a child who was held by a loving presence before he became a self-conscious adult. That state is gone. It cannot be retrieved through eBay. What he's really chasing is an archetypal unity, a return to the womb of existence. And when you chase an archetype through material or digital means, you are entering a labyrinth with no center. This is the archetypal hunger for home, and it is being exploited on a scale that we have never seen before. Right now, algorithms do not need to understand your soul. They only need to recognize the pattern of your longing. And they do, every time you pause on an old image. Every time you replay a track from 2012, every time you engage with content that evokes a past era, the machine learns. It learns that you are most manipulable when you are nostalgic. So it feeds you a personalized loop of your own history. It builds you a false home, pixel by pixel, memory by memory, until you are spending hours a day inside a digital reconstruction of a past that the algorithm curated for you not to heal you, but to hold you. Because a held user is a profitable user, and a user who is busy longing is a user who will never realize they are being farmed. This is not a conspiracy. This is the architecture of the attention economy. Your most sacred wordless longing for unity is being repackaged as a content feed. Let that sink in. That ache you feel at dusk, that sense that something is missing it, is being answered with a YouTube recommendation for 90s summer vibes. And you click, and for a few minutes the ache subsides. But you haven't moved an inch closer to genuine wholeness. You've just consumed a palliative, and the algorithm notes your consumption, and tomorrow it will serve you more. It will build you an entire cathedral of nostalgia, and you will live inside it, and you will wonder why you still feel empty. The emptiness is the absence of your own present life. The cathedral is beautiful, but it's a mausoleum. So this is the diagnosis. You are not just nostalgic. You are hungry for a wholeness you lost before you had language. You are being fed a synthetic version of that wholeness by systems that profit from your paralysis. And you are using these synthetic memories to avoid the difficult, frightening, non-negotiable work of growing up. The question is no longer why do we feel this? The question is, how do we break the cycle before the cycle becomes the entire life? Part V, confronting the present self. If you have followed me to this point, you have already done the hardest part. You have recognized the architecture of the trap. Most people never do. They spend decades inside the loop and call it a personality, but recognition without action is just another form of the same disease. So I am going to give you a framework, not a 12-step program, not a life hack, but a psychological reorientation that can actually free your future from the gravity of your past. The core task is this. You must learn to integrate past lessons without allowing those lessons to overwrite your current responsibilities. And this is more subtle than it sounds. Because your past did contain wisdom, it did contain genuine beauty, it did shape you. The error is not that you remember it. The error is that you let the memory become a substitute for the living, breathing, uncomfortable present moment that is asking for your attention right now. Here is a practical distinction. There are two ways to visit the past. You can visit it as a refuge, or you can visit it as a resource. When you visit as a refuge, you are looking to escape. The emotional signature is heaviness, longing, a desire to dissolve. When you visit as a resource, you are looking to extract. The emotional signature is curiosity, gratitude, and a willingness to bring something back. I want you to start noticing the difference. The next time you feel the pull toward an old song, an old photograph, an old era, ask yourself, am I here to disappear? Or am I here to retrieve something that will fuel what I am building now? If you are here to disappear, you are in the loop. If you are here to retrieve, you are practicing integration. Let's make this concrete. Suppose you feel the urge to listen to a playlist from your college years. Before you press play, pause, ask, what am I really seeking here? Is it the feeling of possibility I had back then? Is it the sense of connection? Is it the confidence I felt before a particular failure? Now, instead of just listening and drifting, write down what that feeling was. Then ask a harder question. How can I create a version of that feeling in my life now, using the person I am today, not the person I was? Maybe the feeling was freedom. How can you engineer a free afternoon this week with no obligations and do something spontaneous? The memory has now become a resource. It gave you data. It pointed you toward a value, and you honored it by building something new, not by reconsuming it. Nostalgia, used correctly, is not a sedative. It is a fuel. It is the recognition that something mattered, and that the energy of that mattering can be redirected forward. The comfort you felt in a past season was real. But it was not generated by the year 1999 or 2015. It was generated by a particular configuration of meaning, connection, and presence. And you can create that configuration again, not by returning to the past, but by embodying the same principles in a new context. The past shows you the shape of what your soul needs. It does not give you the address. You have to build the address in the present. This is the practical side of Jungian individuation. It is not a mystical concept. It is the daily discipline of choosing the difficult path of growth over the seductive path of regression. It is the act of picking up the phone and having the hard conversation instead of scrolling through an old chat. It is the act of sitting in silence with your anxiety instead of drowning it in curated nostalgia. It is the act of creating a new memory that will one day be worth looking back on, but only after you have fully lived it. I want to address a subtlety here. Many people fear that if they stop longing for the past, they will lose a part of themselves, that the past will be erased, and with it, their identity. But this is the frozen child's final argument. The truth is, you lose nothing real by stepping out of the loop. You lose the false comfort. You lose the paralysis. But the genuine love, the genuine lessons, the genuine gratitude, those stay. They integrate into your character. They become part of the foundation on which you now stand, not the ceiling that prevents you from rising. There is a profound difference between carrying the past as wisdom and crawling into the past as a hiding place. The wisdom walks with you. The hiding place traps you. I will leave you with this. The ghost of the past is not evil. It is simply a part of you that became frozen at a point of pain and never got the signal that it is safe to move now. You are the only one who can send that signal. Not by ignoring the past, not by dismissing it, but by walking into the present with the full weight of what you have learned and refusing to let that weight become an anchor. The reality of the self is not behind you. It is not in a decade you miss. It is not in a photograph. It is right here, in the terrifying, beautiful, uncurated moment where you are reading these words, and you have a choice. You can stay in the loop, or you can close the book and write a new page. That choice is not abstract. You will face it again today, maybe in an hour, maybe right now. And when it comes, I want you to remember that the home you are searching for was never a place. It was a state of being fully alive, and that state is available, but only to those who dare to stop traveling backward. Look at your own hands in this moment. They are not relics. They are instruments. They can build something that has never existed before. They can reach toward a person who is here, now. They can shape a future that one day you will look back on, not with longing, but with a quiet, earned pride. So the only question that matters now is, what will you create today that is worthy of becoming tomorrow's memory? Because the loop ends when you start making memories that belong to the present, not by accident, but on purpose. Step out of the ghost. The air in this world is still real, still fresh, still waiting for you to breathe it. And you do that not by forgetting,